Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another exciting session of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name's Joe Grabowski. I'm the founder of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and I'm also a grade 6-7 math and science teacher in Guelph, Ontario. So those who are new to what we're doing here, we're trying to bring science, adventure, and conservation into the classroom through really cool virtual field trips and guest speaker experiences. So really excited today that we have Nizar Ibrahim joining us. He's a National Geographic explorer. He's a paleontologist, works at the University of Chicago, and he's made some amazing discoveries in the deserts of northern Africa. So Nizar, just going to say hi quickly, and then I'm going to introduce the classrooms, but thanks for joining us today. That's so good to see you.
Sure, it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, so let's introduce the classrooms. I'll turn their mics on one by one, and you can say hi. So first we have, there we go. There we go. So first we have a grade 5 class with their grade 1 buddies, so Mr. Shias, or Mrs. Shias and Mrs. Cohen's from New Jersey. Say good afternoon. How's it going? All right. So cool you could join us today, especially on camera. Then we have in Texas, we have Mrs. Amora's grade 3s are joining us. How's everyone doing? Good. All right. I like those thumbs up. We've got Mr. Londos's class in Ashton, Ontario. And they're clearly excited to be here. And last but not least, Mrs. Bird, I just might need you to turn on the mute button. I can't reach it on my screen. Grade 5-6 from Arizona, Mrs. Bird's class. How's it going, everybody?
We stayed in from lunch for this.
Excellent. We're excited to have you here. I hope there's no rumbling tummies in the background. Okay, well, no further ado. Nizar, would you like to take over and tell us a little bit about what you get to do every day?
Sure. I'll tell you a little bit about my work and my field areas in the Sahara. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and screen share. Just let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, is this working?
It's just loading. Yeah, if you can hear me, I can see myself. Yep.
Okay, great. So let me know if you can see this. Can you see the timeline on my screen?
Yep, thumbs up other classrooms if you can see it.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just get started, and if there are any problems, just let me know and I can pause the slideshow. So I'm a paleontologist, and I sometimes also describe myself as a time traveler, because as paleontologists what we do is, we basically travel back in time to piece together what I think is the greatest story out there, the history of life on our planet. It's a pretty incredible story that takes us through moving continents, and we meet all kinds of strange creatures. So if we could actually travel back in time, we would see strange ancient seas with giant predators, marine creatures larger than the largest shark. It would really feel like a different planet. Some things would look familiar, but many things would look very alien. We'd encounter all these bizarre creatures. This is a giant amphibian with countless rows of teeth. There's nothing like it around today. And we would encounter giant predatory dinosaurs like T-Rex, one of the biggest meat-eating dinosaurs of all time. You'll notice that this T-Rex is a little feathered. And the reason we put some feathers on this T-Rex is that paleontology also allows us to reconstruct the changes that different groups of animals go through over time. So one thing we know through paleontology is that some dinosaurs were feathered. So we know that feathers first appeared in dinosaurs. So birds are descendants of a small group of predatory dinosaurs. So if you like, feathers are a dinosaur invention. So those are the kinds of things we can find out through paleontology. I was interested in becoming a paleontologist because I've always loved animals. And you can see on this picture that I'm very happy holding crocodiles or snakes or other reptiles. I just love all animals. So that's one reason why I wanted to become a paleontologist, because paleontology really is about animals, at least if you're interested in extinct animals rather than extinct plants, for example. The other reason why I wanted to become a paleontologist is that I've always loved the idea of traveling to far-flung corners of the world, like the Sahara. I've always looked at maps in books that I had when I was a little child, and I always dreamt of going to these incredible places, like the Gobi Desert and the Sahara. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to go to the Sahara is that I was also really inspired by the work of a German paleontologist, Ernst Romer von Reichenbach. He was really the first, or one of the first pioneers of paleontology in North Africa. And over 100 years ago, he led several expeditions to Egypt's deserts in search of fossils. And he ended up uncovering an incredible lost world of Saharan dinosaurs. Unfortunately, most of his finds were destroyed in World War II because they were housed in a museum in Munich, in Germany. And so he lost most of his finds. But I was really fascinated by this incredible lost world of Saharan dinosaurs. And so I decided to follow in his footsteps and rediscover some of these lost worlds of the Sahara's dinosaurs. The Sahara is a very difficult place to work in, so when I began my fieldwork, I was facing some serious challenges. I wanted to carry out fieldwork in the border region between Morocco and Algeria, a place called the Kemkem. And as you can see on this image, it's not a flat desert, it's a big escarpment. So it's really difficult terrain. And of course, the Sahara is a very unusual place. It's very beautiful. You have these amazing sunsets. This is an oasis in Morocco. But it's also a dangerous place, a deadly place. This is a camel or dromedary that we found in the desert. It's an unforgiving place. So it's this mixture of beautiful and deadly that really makes the Sahara a very unusual and special place for me. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of climbing involved. This is a picture that was taken a few months ago when we were in the Sahara looking for dinosaur fossils. And you can see that you basically have to do a lot of climbing to get up that escarpment to look for fossils. So it's really hard work. We usually go there with four-wheel drive cars. This is one of our cars. And of course, the closer we get to the actual desert, the villages get smaller and smaller, and you encounter fewer and fewer people. And we usually go with several cars, just in case one of our cars breaks down. And after a while, you really don't encounter any other cars. You might encounter the occasional dromedary camel, and that's pretty much it. One thing that people often ask me when I tell them about my fieldwork is, how do you even know where to begin? I mean, we're talking about whoops, sorry, let me just put this back. Talking about a really big place. This is what the Kemkem region looks like. And you can see right in the middle, you can see one of our cars. So it's just like a sea of sand. And how do you even know where to begin? You can't just start digging somewhere and hope to find something. So how do we do it? Well, one thing we do is we look at geological maps, so we kind of know where rocks of the right age are exposed, but we also spend a lot of time scanning the horizon. with binoculars, just looking at looking for localities that kind of look promising and interesting. And then we drive there, and then we spend a lot of time walking around. In some areas in the Sahara, you will actually see fossils sticking out of the ground. So what you see there in front of me is a leg bone of a dinosaur. This is actually a dinosaur fossil in Niger, not in Morocco, where I do most of my field work. But that's what it looks like when you see fossils at the surface. And that's really what we're looking for. And if you're lucky, there will be more bones in the ground. We don't just find bones and teeth, we also find trace fossils. So what you're looking at here is a dinosaur track, and you can maybe just make out 3 toes, just like a bird's foot. So this is a track of a predatory dinosaur. Most of the fossils we find are fairly small. So what I'm holding in my hand here is a tooth. It's probably a tooth of Spinosaurus. But sometimes we find very large fossils. This here is the upper arm bone of a giant plant-eating dinosaur. It's the largest dinosaur bone ever found in this part of the Sahara. So that was very exciting for me. I was, I don't know, 26 or 27 years old at the time. It was one of my early expeditions, so I was very excited that we found such an incredible fossil. And well, what do we do once we collect the fossils? Well, we put the smaller fossils in little bags and label them so that we know where every fossil was found. Everything is identified. The larger bones are wrapped in plaster so that they're protected, and then we bring them back to the lab, and we have specialist preparators, and they clean the fossils and remove all the sediment. And that's basically what we do. That's how we collect the fossils. But then, of course, the real scientific work begins after we get back to the lab. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about this place. So as you saw on the last slide, this is a very dry place now. It's the Sahara. But 100 million years ago, that's how old these fossils are, roughly. 100 million years ago, this was a very different kind of place. We find lots and lots of fossils of crocodile-like predators. Some of them as long as a school bus, some much smaller. All in all, I think we have 7 or 8 different kinds of crocodile-like hunters. So that's very unusual. I mean, clearly these creatures needed big rivers or lakes. And that's what we find there. We found out that this part of the Sahara was a giant river system. Full of big fish, some of them as long as a car or even longer. You can see one of them here, a giant sawfish. And this place was also home to bizarre dinosaurs. And you can see one of them here. This is Spinosaurus, a really, really strange dinosaur. The first skeleton of Spinosaurus was found by the German paleontologist I showed you earlier on, and it was destroyed in World War II. But we found a new skeleton. I tracked down another skeleton of Spinosaurus, and so we now have a much better idea of what this dinosaur looked like. And it turns out that it is a semi-aquatic dinosaur. So that means it's a dinosaur that spent a lot of time in the water hunting these big fish. So it's very different from T-Rex, but it is equally larger, even larger. We actually know that Spinosaurus was longer than T-Rex. This is the reconstructed skeleton. So this is just to give you an idea of the size of this animal. This is the skull of Spinosaurus. The skeleton is about 50 feet long. So that's quite a bit longer than the longest T-Rex, which actually happens to be on display here in Chicago at the Field Museum. So this is Spinosaurus. And one of the things you'll notice about Spinosaurus is that it looks really bizarre. It has long, slender jaws like a crocodile. So that's one of the reasons why we think that this creature spent a lot of time in the water hunting fish like many crocodiles do. The teeth of Spinosaurus are also very strange. They're conical, perfect for catching slippery prey. So again, that tells us that Spinosaurus ate a lot of fish. The feet of Spinosaurus are very wide, and we think they may have been webbed. So there are many features in the skeleton that tell us that Spinosaurus spent quite a lot of time in the water. Of course, one of the strangest things about Spinosaurus is this giant sail, and you can see it here really well. We think that the sail was sticking out of the water, and the question is, what was it used for? So to better understand Spinosaurus, we look at other animals. This is another extinct creature, Dimetrodon. Has a very different kind of sail, so that's maybe not the best model. We looked at reptiles that still live today, and the closest match we could find was this creature here, the crested chameleon. And we think that just like many reptiles today, Spinosaurus used this sail for display. So it would look bigger. It would warn other dinosaurs, and say, look at me, look at how big I am. Maybe it was also display structure to impress the females. But basically, we think it was for display. And that makes sense, because if Spinosaurus spent a lot of time in the water, the sail is the one part of the body that would be sticking out, and you'd be able to see the sail from far away. So it's a great display structure. So this is what Spinosaurus would have looked like swimming through this river system. I call it the River of Giants because it's full of giant crocodile-like hunters and giant fish. So you can see Spinosaurus here just caught a giant lungfish. But there are lots of other creatures there. We also have several predatory animals on land. You can see some of the predatory dinosaurs there. And this is one thing you'll notice here. Lots and lots of predators. It's a really, really strange ecosystem. We have some plant-eating dinosaurs. You can see one of them here, but lots and lots of predatory dinosaurs. The predatory dinosaurs you see here are called Carcharodontosaurus, about the size of T-Rex. So we have an ecosystem with several T-Rex-sized predatory dinosaurs and lots of crocs and predatory fish. So it's really strange, and I've described it as the most dangerous place in the history of our planet. If we could travel back in time, this would be a very, very dangerous place. And even the skies were filled with predators. This is a giant flying reptile we discovered and described and named in 2010. It's the largest flying creature from Africa. It has a wingspan of over 20 feet. And so, yeah, even the skies are filled with predators. And we don't have fossils for just one flying reptile. We have fossils of 3 different kinds of flying reptiles. And this is what their heads would have looked like, just like aliens. So really a strange ecosystem. And one of the questions we were trying to answer is, how could all these predators live in the same place? What were they eating? And turns out that, first of all, they all ate rather different things. You can see that here when you look at the flying reptiles. So they avoided direct competition. But also, many of them have adaptations for fish eating. And we know that there are lots and lots of fish in this ecosystem. And all kinds of creatures, from some of the flying reptiles to Spinosaurus to some of the crocs, were really fish eaters. So through our work in the Sahara, we were able to piece together a picture of this strange ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that is really unlike any ecosystem today. Again, if we could travel back in time, this is the kind of thing we would probably see. A large predatory dinosaur watching a flock of pterosaurs, with giant flying reptiles. It really does look like an alien world, and certainly very, very different from the Sahara today. One thing I'd like to say about these incredible images, when I dig up fossils, I really want to share the thrill of exploration and science with people all around the world and show them what these incredible creatures look like. So I work with artists and we try to bring these lost worlds back to life. So all the images that you saw here in this presentation were created by Davide Bonadonna, my Italian friend and colleague, and together we try to bring these creatures and ecosystems back to life. So I think that's a really important part of our work, sharing our science with a large number of people. So I think that now you know why I sometimes describe myself as a time traveler. It's hard to imagine that these lost worlds and creatures existed on this very planet for millions of years, but their fossils, ghosts from deep time, that's how you can describe them, remind us that these animals were real. And science and exploration allow us to unearth and understand these alien worlds from deep time. And I think I'll leave it at that for now and get ready for your questions.
Okay. Nizar, that was amazing. Thank you for that glimpse back into time. Those pictures are so much nicer to look at than just the bones, which are cool themselves, but those pictures really give you an idea of what that landscape would have looked like. And I especially like the one at the end where you had the desert shot and kind of a little window into what it might have looked at in the past. So that was amazing. Thank you so much. Let's pick a class. Let's go to Texas. Let's talk to our grade 3, see if they have a question, or 2 or 3.
Okay, we're third. Alex, come on. Yes, honey, bring it on up. Here he comes. Be sure to introduce yourself and that you can see yourself on camera. Okay. You'll have to duck down, babe.
Hi, I'm Alex. How many Spinosaurus fossils have you found?
Did you hear him, or does he need to speak up?
How many Spinosaurus bones? Was that the question?
How many Spinosauruses have you found?
Oh, how many Spinosauruses? Well, we have one good partial skeleton with leg bones and spines and pieces of the skull and the tail. So that's our best skeleton. That's one individual. Now we find lots and lots of isolated teeth of Spinosaurus, but of course that's just teeth and little bits and pieces. But it's very, very difficult to find good skeletons of Spinosaurus. So we only have one good one. The only other good one in existence, was destroyed in World War II, so it's no longer in existence.
Thank you.
Great question. Can we steal another one from you guys?
Oh, yes, fabulous. Lily V. I pulled 2 sticks. I call them my sticks. They all want to ask, so I had to draw names.
Yeah, there's a lot of hands over there. That's a good thing, though.
I'm so sorry. I should have let you guys pick so I didn't feel so much pressure. Okay, go ahead, babe.
When did you find your first dinosaur and what was it?
Speak up, baby. Say it one more time.
When did you find your first dinosaur and what was it?
When did I find my first dinosaur and what was it? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, so I found my first dinosaur in, I think it was 2007, and it was, I think it was a vertebra, and it was a large predatory dinosaur, maybe Spinosaurus. It wasn't terribly complete, but I think that was the first dinosaur fossil I found. The first fossil I found in the Sahara, I do remember that, was a fossil from a giant sawfish. But yeah, I think that was the first dinosaur.
Okay, great questions. We'll see if there's time to swing back for maybe one more as the call goes on. Mr. Londos in Acton.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice and loud. Hold on, I gotta turn on our mic.
It's on.
Is it Boyan? Can you hear us?
You're on. We gotcha.
Hello. How do you know you found a fossil and not just a rock?
That's a good question. When I went on my first expedition, I was a little worried. I was really young at the time and had never carried out fieldwork in the Sahara. And I was just thinking, oh my God, what if I just go there and I don't even know what I'm looking for and I pick up things and it's just rocks? How do I know what the fossils look like? But after a while, you get better and better at finding fossils. bone has a really interesting texture. So if you look really closely, you can usually tell whether you're looking at bone or just a rock. You see all the fine little openings and little strands that you typically see in bone. So after a while, you get pretty good at it. And some fossils have a very characteristic shape, especially teeth and skull bones and so on. So I think it's just about getting used to looking at the ground and scanning the ground for these fish and dinosaur fossils and so on. But after a while, it's pretty easy.
Can I go? Oh, it's on? It's on. Wait, we're not muted.
Oh, there you go. Great question. One more if you guys like.
All right, Josh.
No.
Listen up.
How do you know which bone belongs to which dinosaur?
That's a great question, because many of the bones we find are isolated bones. So we just have one bone. And so what we do is we look at the shape of the bone and we compare it with the bones of other dinosaurs. So if say we find a neck bone, then I'll compare it to other dinosaurs. I'll say, well, does it look like a neck bone of a large plant-eating dinosaur? And if it doesn't, then I'll say, well, maybe it belongs to a flesh-eating dinosaur. And I'll look at different kinds of meat-eating dinosaurs. And when I find one that is really similar, then I'll say, well, it's probably a meat-eating dinosaur that is quite similar to this particular one. And that's how we kind of narrow it down. So it's basically detective work. You just compare the shape of the bones to dinosaur skeletons that are fairly complete.
Great questions. I've got Mackenzie here from my class. She's going to duck in for one question.
How old is the Spinosaurus?
Okay, so you mean how old are the fossils, or how old was the animal when it died?
How old was the fossils?
Okay, so the fossils are roughly 100 million years old. This particular stretch of desert in the Sahara is actually a little bit tricky, because we know the age of the rocks that are just on top of the dinosaur-bearing sediments, but dating the dinosaur skeletons themselves is actually quite tricky. So we're working on that, but they're roughly 100 million years old.
Wow, thank you.
Great question, Mackenzie. Let's take a little trip to New Jersey and visit the grade 5 and their grade 1 buddies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you go ahead on up? Can you get to the camera? And give your name. Go up closer to the camera. You may have to get down on your knees. Yep, make sure you ask your question nice and loud.
My name is Brandon, and my question is, how long did it take you to find all the fossils that you found?
Okay, hi Brandon. Well, all the fossils we found in the Sahara, I started collecting there in 2007, and I'm still working there now. So we've been working there for quite a few years. But I can tell you that for the Spinosaurus skeleton, for example, I've been working at that site for several years now, and there's still more to be found. So once you find a really interesting, productive site, you might spend years working there. So yeah, it can take many years to really collect everything in a given locality.
Jessica.
How long have you been a paleontologist?
Well, officially, I've been a paleontologist. Well, I completed my university, my undergraduate degree in 2006, and I got my PhD in 2011. So I guess 2011 is when I was really, a PhD paleontologist. But then, of course, my parents and grandparents will probably tell you that I've been a paleontologist since I was about 5 or 6 years old. I've been interested in ancient life for a very long time, but officially since 2011.
All right, great questions. Arizona, Mrs. Bird's class, do you have a couple questions? I just need you to turn the mic on for me because I can't reach it on my screen.
Hi. Well, how fast can a Spinosaurus swim?
That's a very good question. And we're still working on that. The problem with Spinosaurus is that we don't really have a good modern-day equivalent, because Spinosaurus isn't really the same as a crocodile. I mean, it has very different proportions. It's clearly not like a fish. It's not like a typical dinosaur. So trying to figure out how exactly Spinosaurus swam is something we're doing right now, we're working on right now, because it has these paddle-like feet, but it also has a big tail. So we're trying to figure out, did it mostly use its tail, or was it paddling with its hind feet, or a mixture of both, and when did it use which mode of locomotion? So figuring out the speed is kind of difficult, but it's a very large animal, so I don't think that Spinosaurus would have been incredibly fast and agile, but then the big fish in this river system are really, really big, so they wouldn't have been particularly fast and agile either. I mean, we're talking about really big, chunky, car-sized coelacanths, for example, and giant sawfish. So we can't put a number on it now, but clearly fast enough to catch these big prehistoric fish.
Great question, and go ahead and fire away with one more.
Why does the plaster help keep the bones like safe and stuff?
Okay, that's a good question. So we put plaster around some of the fossils because the plaster hardens, so it basically becomes like a very solid shell around the fossil. So we can put this, what we call it, a plaster jacket. We can put it in a car, we can put it in a crate, we can fly it around the world. It's a really solid shell, so the fossils are protected, and so that's why the plaster is really important. And then when we're back in the lab, we basically crack open the plaster jacket, we remove the plaster, which, as I said, is really hard, and then the fossils inside are not damaged, and we can prepare them.
Okay, great question. So, Nizar, if you're okay for a couple more, maybe we'll visit each of our classes one more time as a final sign-off.
Sure.
Maybe one more question. All right. So I'm just going to work down my list in order. So that would be first on my screen, Mr. Londos's class, if they have another question.
Yeah! The bottom one. The other one. I want to see. The bottom one. The bottom one. Yeah, the very bottom one. Yeah.
No,
wait, they already asked that one. How do you know how old the fossils are? No, they already asked that one. They already asked that. They already asked that. No. Yeah, they did. They already did. Probably a little bit. We're the weird class. Just so you know. We're back to
listen. So the question was, how do you actually know how old they are? How do you date them? How can you tell when they're from?
Oh, how old they are, okay. So there are many different methods we use to date fossils. It's a little complicated, but it often helps us if we have layers of volcanic rocks. These can be dated very accurately. And if you have these layers, say if your layer with fossils is kind of sandwiched between two layers of volcanic rock that can be dated, then you're in luck because you kind of know, what age the sediments in between would be. There are many different other methods that are, usually we try to use as many as we can to get as precise a date as possible. But when it comes to places like the Kem in the Sahara, unfortunately, we don't really have anything that is very well, dateable. We have one layer of rocks on top of the dinosaur beds. We know how old that layer is because it's full of invertebrate fossils that have a specific age. So these are like marker fossils. But the sediments underneath are just very difficult to date. So That's why our age for the Chem fossils is kind of, you know, an approximation.
Okay, a solid question. Working down my list, our grade 3, Mrs. Zamora's class in Texas. I wish we could answer every single hand, but we can do one more for sure.
Make sure you can see yourself. Wait, introduce yourself. He said, "Hi, I'm Angel. How do you get to be a paleontologist?"
Ah, that's a great question. There are many different ways to become a paleontologist. You have to go to, I mean, if you want to become a paleontologist, work in a museum or a university, you will need to get a university degree. You can get a degree in zoology or in biology or in geology or a mixture of these disciplines. And then if you want to do research in a research department, you also need to get a PhD. So it takes quite a long time, but I would say it's worth it. It's a great career, and as I said, you get to become a real life time traveler, and I think that's pretty cool.
All right, great question. Hopefully we have a few future junior paleontologists in the crowd. Let's go to Arizona, Mrs. Bird's class. I just need you to hit the mic for me.
Hi, we just wanted to know if there was anywhere we can follow your explorations on social media or any sites, websites we can see what you're doing.
Sure. Well, first of all, the National Geographic Society has quite a lot of information on my research. So if you just type in my name and National Geographic, you'll find quite a few interesting links. There's a documentary that is also online, I think. It's called Bigger Than T-Rex. I also work with TED, so I've done 2 TED Talks. So if you type in my name and TED, you can find some of my presentations. And we will have a really exciting new discovery that will be announced at some point in the next few months. And again, it's going to be through National Geographic. So, you know, National Geographic is probably your best address there.
Yeah, my students have seen many of your things, so they were all shaking their head at everything you mentioned. So, exciting.
Okay.
All right, great question. And our grade 1s and 5s in New Jersey. You want to wrap us up with a final question?
Hold on, Ellen. Don't move. Make sure he's not moving to move around. He's coming. He's getting his way to the microphone. Okay, make that turn around. You went right past it. Turn around. Get down on your knees. There it is. Okay, that's your name. Your question. Okay, say your question real loud, please.
How many Brontosaurus bones have you found?
How many Brontosaurus bones? Well, Brontosaurus is a dinosaur that is only found in North America. So I have carried out my fieldwork in Europe and in North Africa. So we haven't found any Brontosaurus bones because there aren't any Brontosaurus fossils on those continents. But we have found bones of a similar dinosaur, a long-necked dinosaur called Rebachisaurus. So it's kind of a similar dinosaur. It's like an African Brontosaurus, if you like.
Thank you.
Okay. Great presentation, great questions. Nizar, I think I speak for everyone who watched today when I say thank you so much for your time. You've got a really exciting career. And I know for sure my class will be following along to see what your new discovery is, and I bet you have some more fans around North America now. So thank you so much. If you want to say anything in closing, and then I'm going to turn all the mics on and let the classes wave and say goodbye at the very end.
Sure, thanks a lot. Well, thanks a lot for having me. It was a lot of fun. And I'll keep you up to date about the next few discoveries. So you can maybe share those with the classes that were joining us today.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. So I'm going to turn the mics on right now, so it's going to get loud for a moment. Mrs. Birds, you can turn yours on. So everybody say thanks.
Hello.
All right, we're signing off. Thanks for a great session.